Thank you for doing that because I was afraid I would forget.
Hey, good morning. Is it Sadali? Is that how you say your name?
Correct, Sidali.
Sadali.
Hey, Sadali, how are you?
Good morning, Laura. Good morning, everybody. How are you guys
Thank you
doing?
so much for coming.
Yes, I'm excited that you're here with us.
Thank you.
We're waiting on another participant to come in and then we'll get things going. But in the meantime, Troy, Sadali, and I worked. How many years ago was it, Sadali?
Oh, 8 years? Was it 8 years?
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
maybe more than that. Actually, it was it was 10 years.
Gosh.
10 years
Gosh.
because I remember we started and then we stopped and
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. We did. I forgot about
yeah,
that. We started and then we stopped for a while and then we
uh,
got back going again.
it
Um,
was
but it's
May
been longer ago than I
20,
know.
2016.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. That was the year after I got started in real estate. And so you were one of my first clients. I had worked with other people before, but that's been longer ago than I even realized.
How long did y'all work together?
Oh, well, we did start looking and then we stopped for a while and then we started again. And once we started again, we found something pretty quickly. Um, so I can't remember, but
Awesome.
he got a good property. I mean, it's in a really highly um,
Desired area.
desired general location because it's close to a lot of good stuff. So
Where's it at?
it's really good.
What
When was the
area?
last time you came visit Beaufort, Laura?
Oh gosh. I'm through the area of Buford pretty frequently, and it has grown so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
1000%.
Yep.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes, it's growing crazy.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
traffic has gotten a lot worse.
Oh man.
The traffic is no fun.
Uh, but that's everywhere in Georgia now,
It is. You're
except
exactly
if
right.
you go to Carlton County, south.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really weird. My husband and I drove through South Georgia on our way down to Florida earlier this summer, and it really is true what they say about Georgia being two different states.
Yeah.
You've got the metro area, and then you have this
Other.
area that looks like you're going through farms and orchards, and it's so different, just so different.
Yeah.
So, well, welcome in, Kathleen. Kathleen's here. Now, Troy, you remember
Hey,
Kathleen. Hi, how's it going?
it's going good. Sorry, I was rushing home, so I'm just getting a couple things ready.
Oh, no
No
worries.
problem.
No worries. Take your time. Take your time.
You guys good?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah, we're
yeah. Safety
good.
first.
You guys look great.
Well, thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Is Mike there?
He is grabbing a couple things, getting the baby already. He may or may not show up just because one of them's sick.
Oh,
Oh,
bummer.
Yeah,
Bummer.
y'all have two babies now?
we have three. Oh, say hey. Yes.
It,
No, you can't.
it,
Hello.
grow out of that
Hi,
house
Mike.
quickly. Way to go.
Well,
They were asking if you're coming. I was like, oh, he's trying to get the babies already. One's been sick. So,
Oh,
you want to go
wow.
back to me? Yes.
It's nice to hear you guys' voices. That's great. So, Dolly, how many kids do you have now?
like seven.
-4.
No, I'm sure we have three. We have three.
I was
Feels like
trying to do
seven
that. I was
sometimes.
like, are they gone? Like, did they grow out of the house?
No. It feels like seven sometimes.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Amen
All
to
right.
that.
Well, let's get going here. I know both of you have been through the process with me, but it has been a while. So, as you just think about getting back into the market or just making long-term plans or whatever, it's always a good idea to have some expectation of what's happening in the market. Both of you have homes to sell. We're going to look at home buying for this webinar, but one of the things that I want to do now that this series is coming to an end is I want to put together some about selling homes, and do some other webinars in the future. So listen out for that. But we'll do that as well. And I work with people all the time who have to do both at the same time, sell and buy. Um, we are in a market now, just FYI, where that can be done. The market has slowed down, and so sellers are more willing to accept offers that are contingent on the sale of another home. Um, it's a little bit more difficult for you, but you can do it, and people are doing it all the time. So that is an option. So just wanted to throw that out because not too long ago, that was kind of unheard of because the market was going so quickly that people, if they had the ability to get an offer that was not contingent on the sale of another home, they would take that one over the contingent offers. But we're out of that, which makes moving a little bit easier. So just be aware of that. Um, all right, so let's just jump right in here and we'll get going. So one of the things that I wanted to remind you guys about is what I'm doing, what I see my job as. All right. So the first thing that I like to do is get to understand what your needs are. And that's more than just what kind of house you're looking for. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about that part of it in a little bit, but I want to understand kind of what your goals are, what you're looking for, but also what's your time frame? What things are going to make the transaction easier for you? We just talked about how to sell the house at the same time you're buying a house. Those are all under the umbrella of what your needs are. And we'll also talk about finances, and that's where Troy jumps in there too. And in addition to that, understanding your needs for me also includes things like what is your life schedule? I have some people who have a specific time of day on a specific day of the week for looking at homes, and so I try to accommodate that. And if it's first thing Saturday morning, okay. If it's in the evening on Wednesdays, okay, we'll figure that out. And then I also want to educate you about what's happening in the market and the process itself of how you go about buying the house. Of course, you've all received this benefit before, which is coordinating the viewings of the homes. I'm going to map them out. You tell me what you want to see, and I will map them out, and I'll figure out the most efficient way, the most efficient order to go in. I'll get the permission that's needed for the showings from the listing agents. I will go ahead and get disclosures if they're available on those homes and get those to you so you have those in advance, and we'll knock it out that way. Of course, I'm going to negotiate for you, and that's one of the most important things that I do in my job. Guiding you through the transaction. We're about to go through the entire timeline of all the steps that are going to be followed in order for you to close on the purchase of a home. But you won't have to worry about things like deadlines and all that. Troy and I are both on top of the deadlines that are involved in getting the mortgage approved in his case, and getting through due diligence and all the other deadlines that are involved in that. So you don't have to keep up with it yourself. I'll help you with that. And then I know one of the things that typically happens in the transactions that I'm involved in is that I get involved so much that once closing comes and I touch base with my clients like a month later, they're like, wow, it's been so weird. It's been so quiet. We haven't talked in so long because during the transaction, all of us are going to be talking a lot to each other. And you can be thinking about what is the most convenient way to communicate. I have some folks who are really more better served if I'm communicating through text because they're trying to do their full-time job at the same time. And looking for a house and getting through to closing sometimes is like having a part-time job. So however the most efficient way for you guys to communicate with me, I'm good with. I can email, I can text, I can call, I can Zoom, I can meet you somewhere in person. However you want to communicate is good, but communication is going to be super important through the whole process. All right, so now down to the nitty-gritty of the timeline for closing. We're going to start with defining your needs, and we already talked a little bit about that, but specifically on the home part, on the property that you're looking for, um, go ahead and be thinking whether you're talking about moving in 6 months or moving 2 years from now. Go ahead and be thinking about what are the must-haves. All right. Because if you asked me right now, what kind of home do you want for your next home? I'm going to list a whole bunch of stuff because I have really clear ideas about what my dream home is, but those are not necessarily must-haves. One example I like to give about this is when I talk with clients, a lot of times I say, okay, we know how many bedrooms you want, how many bathrooms you want, but do you want a basement? Do you need a basement? And they'll say, oh, a basement would be nice. Well, think about it because a basement's going to add in a small home at least $10,000, and if it's finished a lot more than that, and if it's in a larger home it's going to go up from that. So do you really want to pay for that space if it's just well, it would be nice. In my circumstances, it's a must have because my mom lives with us and she lives in an apartment in the basement. So it's a fully finished basement and she has everything she needs to live independently, but still be in the house with family. So that's a must have for me, but it's not for everybody. So think about it that way. What do you have to have? And if a good way to ask yourself about this is if this house that I'm looking at online does not have that thing, I don't even want to see it. All right. So really hammer in on what you must have. The other part of the definition of your needs is going to have to do with the financial piece. So regardless of how you're going to fund the purchase, that's a big part of what's going to impact your needs. So let me get Troy's input here on how you figure out, how are your finances going to impact this purchase and how do you go about getting pre-approved from a mortgage perspective?
Yeah, so one of the first things, like I said, we're going to look at what what are your financial goals, what are your long-term goals, and do our best to weave those in to the same objective. And one of the things I just wanted to share is that Laura and I have worked together for 10 years because we had the same ethos and paradigm that we believe it's always in the best interest of the client. And we had a guy, one of our previous customers was like, hey, I got to get a new house. We need to reorganize debt and pay stuff off. Laura and I talked, we were like, hey, it'd probably be better to do a refinance, keep the family there. And, it ended up, we're always going to, we are always going to look out for your best interest. And in that, we're going to sit there and go through, like Laura was talking about, what's the finances. We're going to look at credit. Now, we don't do a hard inquiry on the front. We do a soft query, but we'll look at that, figure out what do we need to do to strategically put you in the best position to buy this house. Um, Once we do that, we're going to do the pre-approval. And basically, when we do a pre-approval with technology and stuff, what I like to do is do a Zoom calls now, is share the screen and let's lay it out so you can see the numbers. We're talking about the same number and stuff. It makes it a lot easier to see what's going on. So Zoom has been very helpful on that. And then what we're going to do is, hey, here's what your next steps are. Once you have the pre-approval, I'll send a copy of the pre-approval letter to you and also Laura. And at the same time, we're going to go over, if you haven't picked out a house yet, we're going to go over the general, hey, this is about how much you're going to need for funds to close. Once you do start looking at a house, you're like, hey, Troy, we're thinking about this offer. Laura will let me know. We go in, I pull the tax bill, we get as much detailed information as we can, and then we do another quick Zoom call and go over, hey, here's how much we realistically think your money situation is going to look like and everything. And once you're comfortable with everything, we turn it over to Laura.
Yep. Yep. One quick note is I'd say that the majority of my buyers need to go ahead and get a mortgage of some sort, a loan of some sort. Um, but there are cash buyers, and I've worked with those as well. If you are a cash buyer, what we do is rather than sending pre-approval letters with your offers, we send proof of funds. So if you know of anybody who is looking to buy with cash, that's the way you do it. You have to provide proof of funds for that. Um, Troy, why don't we, while we're on the subject of the loans, why don't we talk a little bit about what sort of the overview of the different types of loans are out there?
Okay, perfect. So there's a lot of different loan combinations, and each one e- e- each one has a fit. If you're in this situation, this is the best situation, best type of loan. Conventional has this. One of the ones like FHA. Let's say that we're having somebody that you don't have a lot of funds to put down right away on a house. You can do 3.5%. Let's say that the credit score is a little bit lower, or that they have a little bit more debt. FHA gives they they have more tolerances and considerations if there's slightly less money to put down credit and stuff like that. Um, and one of the trade-offs is they usually have better rates, but you also have MI. So there's a lot of back and forth that we look at, and you can count on us to go through and do a good analyzation of that. There's conventional loans, and we can go as low as 3% down. Um, if you do put down over 20%, there's no mortgage rate. We can talk about fixed terms, and also ARMs are starting to, ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage. It floats with what the market is. I just priced one the other day. They're not quite competitive yet to get back in the market. I would at right now, but with something that we would look at. And then if your prior service or if your spouse was military and they're deceased, you can go with a VA loan. I like those because they're zero down and everything. They're easy loan. Jumbo loans, if you're buying a big house, we've got lots of different ways for that. We can look at if jumbo loans, like if you're self-employed, we have a lot of different programs. And one of my favorite is the USDA loan. It's kind of like a Cinderella loan. It fits perfect. Or it's a perfect loan when it fits. And it has some stringent criterias, but you have to have an income, or it's an income limit. Their house has to be in a particular area. It's backed by the USDA. But the same people that grade our eggs, butter, and steaks also do mortgages. And I think that's a great opportunity. The reason why they do that is um, in the agricultural areas, the belts and stuff, there wasn't affordable housing. And so you couldn't get your workers and stuff. So they came out with a great program if it fits. And so there's lots of different ways that we can tailor made. And what we'll do is, let's say that you qualify for two or three different type of loans. We're going to lay it out, and we'll go through the pluses and minuses of each one and let you pick.
That sounds good. Okay, good. So, Sadali, if you get tired of traffic, the USDA loan might work for you. You can find you a nice remote location. All right. Tell us a little bit about how, so I know a lot of times when people are beginning to look at getting into a transaction to buy a house, they're thinking a lot about the cash that it's going to take, for that first step of getting through the closing, what kind of down payment am I going to need? But then the really for the long haul, you got to look at what's your monthly payment going to be and what's it going to look like. So can you kind of break that down for us?
Yes, this is I like this puzzle here. One of the things that in lending laws, mortgage companies only have to disclose what they call the P&I, not the TIA. The P&I is principal and interest. The reason is they don't theoretically, if a person's like, oh, hey, how much would that house be? They haven't done any background, so they don't know what the property taxes are. They don't know what the homeowner insurance or if there's an HOA. And what happens is this this makes a basically a fake picture a false picture of what their payment's going to be. I just ran into this last night talking to a client, and they were like, "Oh, hey, we want a monthly payment of 2,300." And then we had to talk about taxes and insurance, and they were like, "Oh, it didn't have that." And so now we have to readjust everything because their monthly budget was 2,300, but it didn't include any of the property taxes, insurance, and if there's any association dues. So one of the things that we do try and do is once you start narrowing down, we're going to drill all the way down and get as close as possible. Now we're still going to be it's going to be a close estimate, but the best part about us is that you've got the nerd team that we're going to take care of this and do our absolute best for you.
And Troy has a spreadsheet for everything. So you do know that you really do have the nerd team here. You have me who loves statistics and real estate market statistics, and you have Troy who has a spreadsheet for everything. So we are definitely the nerd dynamic duo. So yeah, this is really important because I know a lot of times when you get online and you look at the little mortgage calculators on all the different websites, it'll give you an estimated payment on a given house, but it'll just be that principal and interest, and it won't factor in the other things. And so all of a sudden you think you can get this, this house, and it's nothing. It's not going to come out the way that is leading you to believe. So just be careful about that. Okay, so once we got a good idea of what you're looking for, and we have your funding, figured out, and you have an idea of what you want to afford, and how that translates to a purchase price. Then we go shopping. I want to give you a few ideas about, and I've kind of perfected this list after being out with a lot of buyers. I try to stay in the background when you are looking at a home. All right. But what I will do is if I see something that is special about the house or is a problem potentially about the house or a red flag, I'm going to point those things out, because there's a lot for your brain to deal with when you're looking at a house for the first time. So I'm going to let you do that, but I will also let you know if I see something that causes me some alarm. Sometimes you can walk through a house, and I even do this. Like I was doing this with somebody who was thinking about selling their house earlier this week. And when I went back, I saw something I missed the first time. And it was a water stain on the ceiling. And, water stains on the ceiling can be anything from it needs a new roof to there was a plumbing leak overhead to there was a condensation leak in the air conditioner in the attic. It can mean a lot of different things, but it is something that's going to have to be figured out. So I will, if I see something like that, I'm gonna call your attention to it. The other thing I'm going to try to do when I'm with you is if you've already told me about certain things that you really need about the house, if I see how there's something in the house that really could be changed to fit that need, then I'm gonna mention that. But when you're in there, I encourage buyers to go ahead and take some pictures on your phone, take notes if you want to, take a quick video of your walkthrough, because when you see multiple homes, while you're in them, you're going to think you're going to remember them completely. You're not going to. I don't. I look at lots of houses, and I can walk out and if somebody will ask me a question and I won't remember whether the laundry room was on the top floor or the bottom floor. There's things like that are going to be important to keep straight in your mind if you're considering it. If you walk in the house and it's one of those houses that you're like, this one's not going to work, then don't worry about it. But if it's one that it's a possibility, I encourage people to take some photos, or a video to help them remember when they're thinking about it later. It is fine, even if it's an occupied house, it is fine for a buyer to look in the cabinets, to look in the closets, to look under the sinks. You don't want to be surprised later about something that you didn't take a look at. So it does feel strange when you're going through an occupied home because it's obvious that this person's personal property is there, but it is okay for you to go ahead and look. at everything you want to look at. If you need to go up into the attic, that's fine. If you want to go in the crawl space, if it's a house with a crawl space, that is okay. I'm not going to go in the crawl space with you because I do not like spiders, but I will go in the attic with you if you want. um, Now, as far as another little tip for you is when you're in a house that's very cluttered, it is hard to see the space. And you kind of have to remind yourself to look past the personal property. The other thing is I've been in homes where it looks like an interior decorator lives there. They've done such a beautiful job, but again, you have to try to get your brain to look at the walls and the floor and not the rugs and the furniture and the pictures. It does give you a good idea of what it can be, but it can also distract you from the things that you need to be processing about you living there. Um, and then one thing that I harp on now that I didn't used to is be aware of surveillance because there are a lot of people now who have surveillance set up inside and outside the house. So when we're in a house and we're talking about the house, it's fine to go ahead and discuss things like, what we're looking at and whether it fits your needs. But if you absolutely love the house, um, it's good to be a little lower key about it because there may be people listening to what you're saying or watching your body language. And if you're telling me, Laura, this is the one, this is absolutely the best house. We've been looking for 6 months and this is it. I want this no matter what the cost. Well, we just blew all of our negotiating power if somebody hears that. On the flip side, if you think that it might work, but you say something about, oh man, who picked that picture? Or geez, who painted these colors? If it's a house that you want and that you can change whatever you don't like, let's not talk about the things that would offend a homeowner because they can hold that against you. Um, so you have to kind of be a little bit careful about what we say when we're inside the house or even on the front porch where the Ring doorbell may be listening to us. We don't want to talk about money and we don't want to talk about, too much about what about the things that you absolutely love or the things that you absolutely hate. We can talk about them later. And it's fine. And I don't want to make anybody paranoid. It's fine to say, oh, I really like the way this is laid out. That's fine. And that actually gives you some goodwill from the sellers. Um, Sellers can be pretty sentimental about their home. They've raised children there. They've had parties there to celebrate big occasions. There is an emotional attachment that most sellers have to their property. And so we just have to kind of have some respect for that and know that that this is already an emotional thing for them to let go of that property. So just be aware of that.
I
All
do have
right.
a quick funny story about that. Is
Oh, yeah.
that this is thank God they didn't have cameras back then, but we went and looked at a house and the bathroom was Pepto-Bismol pink. And my wife was like, "What the?" And was like, "Oh my God, we got to redo that before we even look at it again." And later on, we were talking, and what we found out the reason why the family never repainted it was their grandmother, who was deceased, picked out the colors, and it was emotionally tied to them. Like, oh,
Oh, good thing there was no camera there. Yep.
exactly.
Yep. I had a client who was selling a house who had cameras everywhere. He had little kids, and so they had a lot of cameras. And after the showings, he would say, "Yeah, I don't want to deal with these people. I can just tell that they were going to be super picky. They were looking at, like with a magnifying glass practically at every little thing that they thought might be a problem." And I was like, "Ooh." And he didn't have sound on, but he was watching them go through the house and deciding whether or not he wanted to do business with them. So it's a real thing. It's a real
It's
thing now, much
it's
more prevalent
creepy
than
but legal.
exactly creepy but legal, right? Okay, so once you find the house that's gonna fit the needs, then we're gonna make an offer. And the main thing I want to say about offers here, without getting too much in the weeds, is that offers are way more than the price that you are offering to pay for the house. There are so many components to an offer. That's why the offer is, I call it an offer package, because we're going to send your pre-approval letter or your proof of funds. With that, we're going to send a bunch of exhibits with it that back up the offer and flesh the offer out. And just be aware that when we sit down and talk about what you want to offer, it's going to be a conversation about the purchase price you want to offer, how much you want to ask the closing for the seller to contribute to your closing costs. It's going to be, how quickly can you close? How fast can you, make this happen for them? If you're standing in a vacant house, you know that whoever is selling that vacant house wants a quick closing. All right, so your offer is stronger without it costing you anything else if you can close fast. Likewise, if you're standing in a house that is filled to the brim with personal property, and it may be a little bit time consuming for the sellers to pack up and move out, they may prefer a longer closing. And that's something that I will help you with too, because what I do is when I know somebody is interested in making an offer, I typically will have a conversation with the listing agent to see if there are any special needs from the seller that may not cost you a dime, but will make your offer more attractive to them. And that helps us get a better deal. So there's a lot of ins and outs of what goes into the offer. Another thing that goes into the offer is how long you need for a due diligence period, and we'll talk about due diligence um, a little bit later, but that is a negotiable period of time. So the shorter the due diligence, the happier a seller is. The longer, the more nervous they get about what you need um, to be sure that you're going to stick with the deal. So there's a lot of things that will go into that, and I'll help you with that. Once we have the first offer sent over to them, negotiations get started. And you're not under contract just because you signed an offer. You're not under contract until everybody has gone back and forth. You've made whatever changes need to be made to the contract terms, and then everyone signs. Then you reach binding agreement. And that can be done when you send your first offer. They may accept it, or they may come back with a counter offer, or they may come back with, no, that's too low. I'm not even going to counter it. But there's a lot of different, possibilities for what happens after you send your first offer, and we'll just deal with it as it comes. And negotiations can take a while, or they may be over very quickly. It just depends on how close we are to what the sellers are willing to accept. I do want to mention here something about the current market. The good news for buyers right now is that the market has slowed down, which means that sellers are more negotiable on things like, especially things like closing costs. They're negotiable on price in some cases too. Um, it depends on the history of that listing. If it's a brand new listing, they just went on the market last weekend, and you're making an offer and you want them to come down $80,000. They're less likely to do that if it's a brand new listing, because they haven't had an opportunity to see what else the market will bring to them. But if that house has been on and off the market for the last year, they may be willing to come down dramatically from their price. I will say that regardless of what's going on with the price, many more sellers right now are offering to contribute some to your closing costs. Like it's now rare to see one where they're not paying any closing costs, and that's helpful to you because closing costs, can be, it can be close to 3% of your purchase price, depending on how your financing is working and a lot of other things. But that is something that's very helpful to buyers right now. You are in a smaller pool of buyers than you would have been 2 to 5 years ago. And that is to your benefit. So that's one of the things I really wanted to tell you guys today, because you've already shopped in one market. Now if you get into the game this time, there are some changes that will help you. And it's actually an easier time to buy in terms of getting the negotiations to work for you. So that's really good. And then once we reach binding agreement, we're now under contract. and now we're off to the races. So, we go through, I've talked to Troy about this dynamic before. We go through, let's think about this, let's plan, let's go see some houses, let's think about it, let's make the offer. Then we go back and forth. And then once you're under contract, it's like boom, 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 boom. Everybody starts running. Like it becomes the pace of the whole thing really ramps up, and we get busy. So once we get under binding agreement, let's talk a little bit about the disclosures if you're getting a mortgage. What's that involved, Troy? Oh, are you muted? Whoop,
Sorry about that.
that is okay.
Yeah. So once you guys have picked out a house, you've got a binding offer, and everything, we're going to package it up and we put it in what's called loan disclosures. It it seems intimidating on the first one you're going to get. Okay. It has 120 pages of e-signing and stuff. And it's like, don't make your house a meth house, launder money, commit mortgage fraud. And then it's the numbers and the application. So there's a lot of stuff. It's okay. That we don't have to consummate a business deal until the end. The first disclosure is just simply saying, hey, here's your application. Here's what we're looking like the loan. And you're simply e-signing that you received it. We're still talking. We're not locked unless we discuss it. But the disclosures allow us to keep going. And it also lets you see, hey, here's kind of the premises of what loan we're looking at, and everything. And it allows us to go ahead and keep moving forward. And all this kind of happens at the same time. Disclosures come out about the earnest money and about the due diligence and appraisal. All these usually happen within 7 days of each other.
Mhm. That's right. That's right. And the earnest money is going to be early on. Um, Typically, what I recommend is that when we put the offer in, we say that we will deposit earnest money within 3 days of going under binding agreement. Earnest money, the where it gets that name is it shows that the buyer is earnest about the purchase. All right. You really want the house and we're getting things started. So you're going to put some skin in the game. You're going to put some money into an escrow account. Escrow just means it's in a holding pen. And that holding pen can either be the account that belongs to the closing attorney or it can be an account that my brokerage has. And it's real easy. You're just going to put money in there. And that earnest money is not in addition to what your purchase price is. What happens is when you get to closing, the earnest money is transferred into the transaction. All right. So it becomes part of the cash that you needed to close the sale. It's not in addition to your purchase price. Now, if we end up terminating the contract for any reason that is protected by one of the contingencies in the contract, then that earnest money comes back to you. All right. It's there to show the seller that if, let's just take an example of what it's there for. When we get into due diligence, you can terminate the contract for any reason. Now, if you get beyond the period of due diligence that's in your contract and you change your mind about the house and you just say, I don't want it anymore, it's too long of a commute, to work, whatever. I don't like it anymore. If you terminate the contract after due diligence, then that earnest money goes to the seller. And it's showing the seller, we're going to stick with what the terms of the contract are. We're not saying yet that we're not ever going to terminate the contract, but if we terminate, it's going to be within the confines of the contingencies that are laid out in the binding agreement. Okay. And if we mess up and we just change our minds, then you get to keep the earnest money because it's compensation for them taking their house off the market and potentially missing another buyer while this was going on. All right, so that's what it's for. But the main thing I want you to know is that it's not in addition to your purchase price. It becomes part of the purchase price if you make it to closing. And I will help you as we're going through. I will help you with all the deadlines for all the things that can happen so that if you do need to terminate the contract, we'll do it appropriately so that you can get that earnest money back. Um, once that's done, and then so now we're like 3 days beyond binding agreement. You've put your earnest money in. The day after you reach binding agreement, that's when all the deadlines start. Okay. So one of the most important deadlines in the whole contract is your end of due diligence. During due diligence, that's the time in which you have the opportunity to change your mind for any reason and get out of the contract. It's when people have general home inspections. It's when if you're buying a house that has a swimming pool, if you want to have the pool inspected, you get a pool inspector in there. If the general home inspection shows some red flags about some things, and the home inspector says, I think you need to get a roofer to come look at the roof. There's this part that I'm concerned about, but I'm not a roofer, so you need to get a roofer in here. We can do that. So what I like to do is I like to schedule that home inspection very early on, because if there's anybody else we need to get in, we need to have time to do that. Um, Typically, the most common due diligence period is 7 to 10 days. If we're going under contract, um, and we're having to, it's real important to us to get a lower price. One thing we can do is try to make that lower price more attractive to the seller by decreasing our due diligence time. I have done very successful due diligence periods in 5 days before. It kind of depends on what day we think we're going to go under contract, because we don't want 2 of those 5 days to be weekend days because it's hard to get anybody out there. So depending on how it falls out, and the circumstances and the things that we already see in the house that we want looked at, we'll talk about what's an appropriate due diligence period for you. Due diligence can be extended if you need it to be extended, as long as the seller agrees to it. If they don't agree to it, you're better off terminating the contract. And then you can actually get back under contract later if we work on that, maybe have whatever inspection done outside of contract, potentially even, and then go back under contract with them. So it doesn't mean it's completely over, but we want to protect your earnest money. We want to protect your ability to make sure that you're not getting in over your head. Due diligence to me is one of the most important things that I ever help anybody with, because you just don't want to get into a house and then find out that there's terribly wrong things that are going to cost you a bunch of money, in the future. So that's a really important piece of the whole transaction to me. Once you get past that, then the next milestone is going to be the appraisal. Appraisals are important because the loan that you're getting is based on the appraised value. Now, what happens if the appraiser says your house is worth more than what you have in the contract? What happens is nothing to the transaction. It just keeps moving and you have instant equity. So, hooray. If that happens, we're golden, because now you know the house is actually worth more than what you're about to pay for it. The seller cannot ask you to up your purchase price. All right. Now, if the appraised value is lower than the purchase price that's in the contract, then we have some work to do, because the loan's going to be based on the appraised value. So, we have the right, according to the finance exhibits that we use, to ask the seller to lower the price. They have the right to say no. If they say no, and there's no other way around it, and you say, I don't think I want the house anymore, then we go ahead and terminate the contract and you get your earnest money back, because this is all happening during your finance contingency period of time. If they say yes, then you just simply amend the agreement to have the lower purchase price and you move forward. So there's a lot of different levels of negotiation even after you've negotiated a binding agreement. One is the due diligence, because if there's repairs that need to be done, we may need to ask them for some money to cover what it's going to cost for you to have the repairs done afterwards. Or we can ask them to make the repairs themselves. So there's negotiations there. And then potentially there's more negotiations when we get to the appraisal, if the appraisal comes in lower than what you've agreed to buy the house for. And then once we've gone through the milestone of appraisal, then we can start to go, okay, every step you get through this timeline the more excited you can get because it means you're getting closer to closing day and everything's going well. So the next thing that will happen is you'll need to pick out some homeowners insurance. And Troy, why do they need to do that?
Yes. So homeowners insurance is it's been actually very enlightening. One of the neat things that when we you're going to be responsible for getting your homeowners insurance. You'll generally what happens is you just contact your agent, you approve your quote, and it comes to us. Because we see a lot of the insurance quotes and stuff, occasionally one will come back and look higher than normal. A couple things we do is like, hey, let's check this. Like if it's certain, we know that there's certain insurance agents out there that are not agents, but companies that are price prohibitive. Okay, their rates are always higher. And so we may make a comment like, hey guys, we know a couple brokers. Do you guys want us to help you with an insurance policy? Just get a quote. We're not recommending or anything like that. We'll just help you get a quote. The other very important thing that we look at also about the homeowners insurance is just like uh, a credit report. Each time a claim is filed with a house, that leaves a mark. And it's like some kind of shared database between all the insurance agents. So what we can find out is like, hey, there was a previous big water claim that was not disclosed on the seller's disclosure. And that's why the insurance is high. So those are the different things that we're going to be able to help you guys out with that.
That sounds good. That reminds me, Troy, that I might need to kind of readjust one of the things that I've always thought about homeowners insurance quotes. We might want to get that done earlier than in my mind, it's always closer to closing day, but I think I need to start telling people, we need to look at that earlier because of what you just said. Because if we find things that need to be figured out, I'd rather, things that haven't been disclosed, I'd rather find that out during due diligence because that's when we're negotiating about property conditions. So help me remember that because I might suggest to people that they start earlier on that process.
We've started doing that on the
Okay.
when we're asking, and it's been pretty helpful. One of our agents, Davis Roper, he usually gets me a quote within just a couple of hours. Um, and at the same time, if you're say you're out of town, you don't have time to shop homeowners insurance, just say, hey, Troy, go help me out, get a couple quotes. Let's see what we're looking at. We can always do that. So it's always your choice which homeowners insurance to pick, but there are things that we can do to certainly help out. And it's part of our process when we're help protecting you buying a home.
And as a side note to that, the agent that he just mentioned, Davis Roper, through the process of working with clients, I ended up changing my own homeowners insurance to farmers with Davis Roper because Davis Roper is super helpful and he saved me a ton of money. So you know, I'm not one of those people who shops all the time and, continues to change subscriptions and insurance and everything like I should to try to save money. But I did that time because Davis did a really great job. But anyway, that's a whole different subject, but FYI. All right, so tell us what a final CD is and tell us a little bit about wiring funds.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So what'll basically happen is we've gone through about 75, about 80% of the transaction piece right now. Um, the final CD is going to tell us, hey, this is how much money you're going to need to wire to the attorney. Um, Laura and I are really nerds, and I can tell you that what our goal is, we want to give you a realistic value, but at the same time, I don't want you getting to closing and going, uh-oh, we need 10,000. I would rather you look at it and go, oh, hey, Troy, you overestimated 1,000. I'm getting money back. Um, and so we'll walk through the final CD. We'll go through the numbers, wiring the funds, only accept wire information from the closing attorney. I also ask you to always go back, call them, and physically verify. what will happen is when it's time to wire, the attorney will send you the wire instructions. What One of the common scams that we have to watch out for is, let's say if they can hack Equifax, they can pretty much hack everybody, okay? But they'll sit on a closing attorney's email. They'll watch out. Hey, we need 120,000 for this. Um, they'll go back in and say, oh, hey, that account is undergoing audit. Send it to this. That's an immediate red flag. Stop right there and go to the old style. Call people on the phone and make sure. And also go back to the original, like call us if you make sure you're dialing the right number, because these people will sit there and they'll make it look just real, but they'll put their number on it and be ready to try and act as well. You'll wire the funds. We usually like to do that a day before or 2 days before. And if we wire too much, the attorneys will just simply cut you a check. I'd always rather wire just a little bit too much than less. It just makes it more of a hassle. Your funds will link up with the earnest money that she talked about. That all goes to the final transaction. We e-sign nowadays, which is makes things a lot quicker. Yesterday we had to close in about 22 minutes versus the old ones, which would take sometimes an hour. We're not quite at the attorney's office yet. This is still just before it. And then Laura, once we're usually the day before closing or the day of, Laura will take you on a final walkthrough.
That's right. And the final walkthrough is intended to make sure that the property is in the same shape that it was the last time we saw it. Um, and, you know, really what we're talking about is just confirming, verifying that a tree hasn't fallen on the house. Nobody broke in the night before. You know, there can be things that happen last minute that the sellers may not even know about if they're not living in the house, you know, if they've already moved to their next home. So that the purpose of that is to just walk through, make sure everything is still okay. And it's not designed to, you know, get the sellers to take care of it if there's a little scuff on the wall that we couldn't see when the furniture was there. That's not really what it's for. There's, you know, there's always going to be things that you see that you wouldn't be able to see with furniture there. So that's one reason, going back to the, you know, the whole thing of look around as much as you can, look inside things, look under things. If there's a rug there, let's flip it up and make sure there's nothing underneath there that they're trying to hide. But this is more for things that are pretty serious, substantial damage that has been done. I had one time where the sellers really liked this ceiling fan that they had. It was a special ceiling fan to them, so they were going to replace it with another ceiling fan before they left. And that was something that was part of, you know, our understanding. It was in the contract. And when we went for our final walkthrough, there was nothing up. It was just a hole in the ceiling. And that was the kind of thing where it was like I called the agent and I'm like, whoa, what happened here? But that's the purpose of the final walkthrough. As it turned out, it was no big deal. They just weren't able to finish it, and what they did was they gave the client monetary compensation so they could pick out their own ceiling fan, you know, and have it installed. And they gave them plenty of money to take care of that. So it was all fine, but that's the kind of thing that you want to make sure everything is all addressed before you sign on the dotted line and walk out. And then the last step in the timeline is your closing day. And I always tell people when we celebrate because we just went under contract, that is a mild celebration because there's all of this timeline that has to happen after you've gone under contract. But we do get to celebrate when we walk out of the attorney's office, because then you have the keys in your hand and you're good to go. So that is the timeline. That's all the steps that are involved, and Troy and I will help you get through that. Um, a lot of times people need to know, and you guys kind of already have an understanding of how this works with the buyer's agent compensation. But because since you both have purchased homes, there have been a lot of things in the news, and I wanted to kind of explain how this works. It really, nothing has changed since you guys bought houses. Um, But there was a nationwide settlement that basically said what we're doing in Georgia already is now what everybody has to do. And that is you have to have a signed agreement. And it also talks about how compensation is a negotiable thing. There is there's never been in Georgia, at least not since the 90s, there's never been an expectation that sellers absolutely 100% had to pay for buyer's agent's fees. Okay. However, they are doing it. And here's why. Because if they don't do it, they're not going to get their house sold. In order for them to be competitive, sellers need to pay the buyer's agent's compensation. Legally, you are required to understand that if the seller doesn't pay, then you pay. But here's the thing about that. You're going to know that because it's all going to be part of the contract. All right. So before you ever, go under binding agreement, it's going to already be explicitly stated whether or not the seller is willing to pay for my fees to represent you. And if not, then if you love the house and it's a great deal and they're making up the money elsewhere, you may decide to pay me yourself. Or you can say, oh gosh, we're already, paying market value. We could just go to another neighborhood and buy a house where the seller is paying for that 3% that I charge. And that's my charge. That's what I value my services at. And that's what the seller needs to pay me. So that's how that works. And I just wanted to let you know that when you hear stuff in the news about that, this is what it's referring to. It's two basic concepts. We have to have a written agreement that outlines the relationship, which in Georgia we've always had to do, and you guys signed one back, years ago when I worked with you. And also that the compensation is a matter of negotiation. But just know that just like I'm telling you that now sellers are paying for closing costs, for a portion of closing costs, not all of them, but a good portion of it, they're also willing right now to pay for buyers agents compensation. So you're not going to need to do that. If you do run into somebody, especially like a for sale by owner, and we're working with one of them, they may say, well, I'm not paying for the agent. And then you'll know that before you decide whether or not to go under contract with them. So that's how that works. There is one other thing that I want Troy to cover because this is late breaking. This is something that has just happened in the last month and it has to do with credit. And no matter, unless you're a cash buyer, this is going to apply to no matter what kind of loan or financing you are doing, because your credit score is something that everyone will look at no matter what kind it is. So, Troy, can you tell us a little bit about what has changed recently on this?
Yes, this is so as of July 1st, so this is still really brand new information. It's really hasn't even hit the information channels yet.
Yeah.
What they've done is uh, they have redone our credit scores. So you used to have Transparent, Equifax, and TransUnion. Each one had their own separate finance model or algorithms. And so what would happen is each one judged it on just a little bit different. They've tweaked it over, and now it's active. That now what they're doing is they're all using the same uh, group of information and evaluation criteria. So there you won't have the big extremes sometimes that you do whenever you're pulling credit. Um, One of the things that it's made up now is if you look at this 35%, what makes up your score, 35% is your payment history and your balance history. So this is critical. I just had a client never missed a payment ever, had credit 797. We didn't keep checking his credit and everything like that. And we went under contract and then we did a hard pull. And within 2 weeks, they changed the models, went from 797 to a 686.
Ah,
Why? And the reason is because he had increased his balances over the last 24 months. That's really important. They're now looking back at 24 months and they're watching the balances. Good and bad. Here's the bad. We can't quickly fix those anymore. But the better part is it's given us a better picture of your credit habits by looking over a time. But that just, if you're used to maintaining high balances, let's start working on those. We need to get them into a declining picture. The other thing is, how much do you owe? Where it's 30%. I like to say it's good, better, best. All right. Good is, let's say your credit limit's $1,000. Good is if you're using only 30% of that. Better is if you're using 20%. And great is if you're doing just 10%, that you're maintaining that balance. So you can obviously charge more, but you just want to make sure you maintain those balance. Length of history is also a very important one. I've had people where they've come in and oh, hey, I canceled cards. And what that does is it actually, when you close accounts, it hurts you for the short term, about 60 days. The reason is because there's nothing else reporting. But what I have seen is people go in and cancel the wrong cards. So they'll cancel the ones that have been reporting for 7 years. Oh, I never used that. Well, that's actually a good one. The other thing is your credit mix. It's generally best that you have about three different types of credit. Your mortgage, auto, and other type of loan and stuff. And then the last one is 10% is on your account usage. Like if you're opening up a bunch of credit cards, that's really gonna hurt. Open up only what you need when you need. The middle column right here, what all hurts. This will just kind of tell you like, hey, this is how many points this hurts. You can see late payments. If you're at a 30, or the way it creeps. So if you're at a 30-day late, it's gonna sting. 60 late, you're gonna feel that punch. If you're 90 days late, you're gonna need a bandage on your credit. So we got to look at fixing those. Max out the credit cards. This is just kind of a general one, and we're gonna email this out to y'all so that you can have this. What helps your score? Pay on time every time. Keep your balances low, just like we talked about. Keep the accounts open unless we need to close it. And let's see, becoming an authorized user. All right. In many cases, let's say that we have, like my grandfather has great credit and he's been paying on this card forever, never had a late payment, but I need a little bit of help on increasing my credit score. Sometimes we can go ahead, hey, Grandpa, add me as the authorized user for a temporary time. Do it, update scores. Hey, your score improves. What you and Grandpa decide after that is among your own. Monitor your credit. I highly suggest that you go ahead and freeze your credit until you're ready to shop. ID theft, just about everybody is on the dark web. Everything has been breached just about. So lock your credit and dispute errors if you see something coming up. It's a good reason to monitor your cards, monitor your credit, and everything. If we've got just another quick minute, I'd like to talk about, are you guys, Sadali and Kathleen, are you guys okay if I tell you one more war story about credit theft?
Yeah, go ahead, Tom. I have to.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, thanks. So what happens is if somebody opens up an account in your name, in some cases, they'll use your address and they'll come by like at a mailbox versus like a locked mailbox. They'll come in and they'll start monitoring your mail. Could be even be your post office person, your postal service. But what they'll do is they'll be watching and they will open up an account in Banana Republic for a credit card. Let's say $1,000. They come by, they steal your mail, or when they fill out the application, they have your name and address and social. They'll put a false address where it sends it to them. Okay. So they apply for a credit in your name, but then they're stealing your mail or redirecting it so that you're not getting that bill. Because you'd be like, hey, I didn't apply for Banana Republic. So they steal that piece or change it. Then what happens is you don't know that it's going on. And so they will make like a $10 purchase, $15 purchase, a couple little purchases throughout. And then once they realize that nobody's watching it, then they'll max it out, cut it, and split. And you're stuck with a lot of cleanup trying, well, you used it for a couple months. No, I didn't. It went to somebody else. So those are just some important things to remember when you guys are going through credit, and why it's really good. Please freeze your credit. And then once you call me and we do the application, unfreeze it. Don't forget your passwords. It, it's good to go ahead and tattoo that on the back of a child's neck or something like that, because it's one of those ones that if you ever forget your password for those three, it's like giving a DNA sample to get it unlocked, which is good, but it's always good. Keep the passwords. That's all I got for y'all.
How do you freeze credit? Like how do you do that? Or
Okay.
freeze your what is it? Freezing credit, is that what it's called?
Yeah. Freezing credit. And basically you'll contact the three credit agencies and they'll have usually on their website an opportunity to freeze your credit. At the beginning of the first part, it's going to be a lot of information. It's going to be a lot of validation. Is this right? What did you do this? Which is great. They do a secure. Then once you get set up, you'll freeze your credit. And basically what that means is I can't do a credit check on you. Where this is good is if, let's say that somebody did steal your information and tried to open up a Banana Republic, when your credit's frozen, all of a sudden you're going to get a notification. Hey, you've got uh, a new credit inquiry to the Banana Republic. And you're like, what? And then you know, hey, it got stopped. They did not open it because they couldn't open that line of credit. If your credit's not frozen, you'll never know the difference.
Okay. Okay. That's a good that's a good thing to do. Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, we've taken your time here. We're at the hour mark, but if you guys have any questions, we have time. So if you want to unmute and ask a question, please feel free to do that.
I have a question, Troy, about
Yes.
so the last month, what's the best rate you get for your client?
The best rates. All right. So your rates are basically going to be, it's like a three-legged stool. It's what your credit score is, what your loan amount is, and then kind of what kind of line of what loan you're using. And there's a combination so of all three of those. I do not get paid off a rate. I only get paid off of the loan volume, whatever the size of the loan. So it's my incentive is to always make sure you get the best rate. Um, the rates, I would say that I haven't lost any deals against rate. Uh, what I would say is it just depends on how that is. Now, what I can do is if we do a soft pull, um, I can give you an idea. Hey, here's about what we're looking at the rates. I can give you that up front, and we can do that with a soft pull. It doesn't count as an inquiry or anything. Um, and then once we go in and start talking about rates, I I will go as deep as you want. I am a certified nerd, so if you want, like, I will break out your rates and say, hey, if you're going to pay points, it's best to do it this way. This is the maximized return on investment, meaning I'm going to buy this point and I'll make this money back within 36 months or 36 payments, and stuff. We'll break all that down for you, and send it. Let's see.
I
Is
think
it?
this is really important because oftentimes I hear buyers ask, what are the rates right now? And that's because there's a lot of advertising that says interest rate for the day is this. And that's not the way it works. Everybody gets a different rate because everybody has a different credit score, type of loan, and all those other things that he's talking about. And so your rate is going to be, um, because I suspect, Sadali, just knowing what I know about you from our previous dealings, you probably have excellent credit. And so you're going to get a better rate than the average Joe, and so your rate's going to be different. But it's going to depend on what type of loan instrument you're using. Um, and all that's going to, factor in. I don't know. I didn't mean to jump in, Troy. It's just that I hear that a lot, where people say, what's the interest rate right now? Well,
Just an example. During COVID, we
mhm.
heard about 1%. I know people who got 1%, a lot of them.
Yep.
3%, I got 3%. It was easy to get 3%.
Yep.
2%, 5%, it's the highest during COVID. A lot of people that bought houses, 5% rare when you get somebody get 5%. Most of them it's under 5. So like that's the reason I said I threw this question. Maybe just until now, like the whole year of 2026, is it like 7? Is it 10? Is it 6? Is it
I'm tracking with
because
you. Yes, during the COVID and post COVID, the rates got ridiculously stupid. If you're at a 4 or lower, that's an artifact. I don't see those rates coming back anytime soon. Uh, Over the last 2 years, rates have hovered between 6.25 to 6.625. So it's right in the middle of the sixes. It all depends on there's so much. It's the bond market, it's the jobs report, it's what policies are going on in the White House and stuff. Um, we the market was expecting rates to drop this year, but they haven't. In fact, last Thursday they hit an all-time high in 2 years, and they started coming down a little bit this slowly this year, or this week. But it's generally right now about 6.5 if you're on a 30. If your credit's good and you want to do like a 15-year mortgage, yesterday I was able to, or Wednesday I locked one at 4.99. So term, amount down, and credit all kind of factors into what your rate's going to look like. And so, Dolly, what I'll do is I'll try and attach a quick video that I made that shows the difference in, like, here's how the breakdown is par, lender credits, and discount points. I'll send that over to you. If you have any questions, just hit me up.
like appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what he said, inflation is a big part of what's happening with the rates right now. And one of the reasons why I'm hearing from many sources not to expect the rates to come down like people were predicting last year is because the inflation rate was expected to go down and it hasn't. And so that's affecting all the other things that Troy mentioned, plus the 10-year treasury yield and all of that stuff, which is above my pay grade. I have never claimed to be good at understanding economics, but all of those factors have to do with what the actual rate is, what the rates that can be offered are. And that's on top of all the individual differences in the loan instruments and the credit scores and all the things that you have some control over. But the parts that none of us have control over are are making the difference between what we saw during COVID and what we're seeing now. Just to give you a little perspective, though, I will tell you this. If you looked at decades worth of data, you're going to find that the historical average of mortgage rates was right around 6%, between 6 and 7%. And when I first bought a house in 1988, dating myself here, um, our interest rate was somewhere around 12%, and nobody thought a thing about it. But then it kind of evened out. And if you just average everything together, it's been about 6% is sort of that sort of baseline historically. What has happened is because of those years during COVID and right after that, where we were seeing twos and threes, people thought that was the norm. Um, especially the younger generations. They thought that was the normal thing and that they're going to sit back and wait for that to happen again. It's not going to happen again. It was a unicorn. And if you look at all those decades, you never saw 2 and 3% or 1%, like you were saying. There were some people with 1% interest. Um, very few, but there were there. And those are gone and they are not coming back. So if that gives you a little bit of historic perspective on it, I think that that's helpful, because I do think that we've got to help people understand that if we do see a decrease in the next couple of years, it's not going to be a decrease down to 3 and 4%. If we see a decrease, it'll be like half a percent, maybe. And that's not going to come anytime soon because inflation is not dropping at the rate that it would need to for something like that to happen. So hopefully that helps.
I would tell you,
A little more
it,
nerd research for you.
yeah, one more other quick thing. People say, hey, it's the Fed rate that determines what rates are. Just as we've all broadened with technology and learned, the market has also done that. For instance, yesterday, everything was looking great. And then suddenly around 2 o'clock, I get this notice. I subscribe. It tells me what happens, what's going on if the market starts changing. And uh, Japan had sold off a bunch of US bonds to increase their currency value. And I mean, like they sold off billions, and that turned around and upset the market, and rates started going up late yesterday afternoon. So it's crazy. I will say I pay about 200 a month for a lot of widgets and notifications, and we do our best to watch the rates and say, hey, it's time to lock, and we have that discussion. In general, what we're going to do is like, hey, this is the range we're looking at. And if the rates are continuing to look better, we go ahead and we don't lock the rate. But if it starts getting dicey, I'm going to try and give you a call. If I can't get in call, then we'll go ahead and lock that rate based on what we had talked about. Um, but I do like that. We're going to have a real picture on hey, what kind of rate do you want and everything up front.
That was a that was a very good question, Sadali. I'm glad that you asked about that. Any other
Since now
questions
it's
that you have?
since now it's the buyer market, then I guess if you can negotiate the price, no matter how much you're paying for the rate, if you can make a good deal in the beginning, then you can compensate over the years.
That's right. And you can always refinance. If the rates do start going down, you can always, refinance at that point.
So, Dolly, how much more time do you have?
I have the whole day.
Um, let's see. I don't know if I can. Let me see if I can share my screen. I'll show you kind of what. Um, and we were taping this for other people. We're sorry. You can stop right now, or you can learn some really cool, uh, nerdy stuff here in just a second.
Yeah. You should be able to share. I think I made you co-host and I stopped sharing. So if you want to share that, you can. I'd like to see it too.
Sorry, I'm trying. This is we weren't expecting this when we're talking about.
You're good.
Um, we should have planned this. I should have planned this one better. I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
Oh. Um, all right, let's see. One of the things that let's see, share. Okay. When we talk about like rates and stuff, I just did this for a client. We went ahead and looked at how much his loan amount was. He's selling a house. He's going to be getting roughly about 200, about $300,000 right here. Uh, Once he sells his current home, and what we did was like, hey, once you sell this, do what's called a recast. And what a recast is kind of like lenders don't always talk about it, but it's a cheap way to refi. So if you've got, generally it has to be over $10,000. In this buyer's case, it was 332. We could have renegotiated on a new loan amount, but what I told them what they should do is recast. They take that money they from the sale of their house and they apply it to the principal of the new mortgage they just took. So they sold one, got an influx of money, and now they've got their the new mortgage that they took out with 20%. Now they got 300,000 to add to it. So what happens is you call up the service company, I want to recast with $300,000. And instead of that loan amount going back to 672, it's now reconfigured at 340. Okay. The term doesn't change at all, but you can see down here at the bottom what that recast looks like. So
That's smart.
yeah, it's great. So the guy cut his payments almost $2,000
Wow.
for $500 and still kept his rate versus doing a cash out or, rate and term refi and having to pay closing costs and stuff. This is one of the things that we'll look at and see if that makes the best sense is called a recast. But yes, I'm happy to go through as much detail on credit. I'm a big nerd, and so I do like that part to educate as much as possible. Um, let's see. I was trying to send. I'll send the video to you that talks about rates and points. If you have any questions, you can always give me a call
Thank you.
or shoot me
Appreciate
a
it, Troy.
text. I'll call you back.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else that you would like to pick either brain about, Sadali?
Now, just I noticed that, and I'm talking to a lot of people now that I've been here for many years in Georgia. I noticed a lot of people moving from the north and a lot of people moving from the west coast, and they're selling their houses. Even some of them, they mentioned exactly how much they sold the house and how much they buy the house here. They're saving a lot of money, and I assume that's what's causing the prices in Georgia to go up.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
What you're hearing about that is very true. I
yeah,
just finished working with a family that moved here from California,
yeah.
and they sold a small house there for $725,000. And they bought a house that was probably twice as big here
Yeah.
for about 590. So even though, it was not that far off from what they sold their house for, it was still so much bigger, and it was still substantially less. So we do still have that draw. People are still coming in. We're still coming up on the maps when people have maps where they show you affordability for homes. Georgia's still in good shape, but you're right, it is slowly creeping up. Um, but I think there's enough factors that are helping us where I don't think all of a sudden, like in a year, we're going to be the next California. Like I don't think our values are going to appreciate that much, especially with the market slowing down so much right now. Even though prices still went up, they only went up in certain areas from last year to this year, and the ones that did go up, it was like, no more than 2%. So I don't think that we're going to climb super fast in our home values. So I think people can still afford things. And I think that even as people continue to migrate here from the more expensive places, over time, yeah, it'll make our prices go up, but I don't think it's going to be anything that you're going to feel intensely over the next couple of years. I think it'll take a while for that to happen significantly.
How do you get those kind of clients, Laura? By a referral or by another channel of communication? When people,
That one was a referral from
okay,
another agent who looked me up online and called me and talked with me. He had known this client for a while and he wanted to make sure that he connected them with the right person. And it was a good match. And that's how I got that business. Um, I do some social media stuff to try to reach those populations, but honestly, that was the only one that I've had from California. Now, on the listing side, um, during COVID, there was a house that I had I listed it for the seller, and 3 out of 5 good offers we got on that house were from California residents. So I thought that was really a good example, you know. And so that those were not my clients, but they were other people's clients who were coming in because they could afford it and wanted to get out of the more expensive areas. So, I mean, it is happening. But the only one that I've had came from a referral from another agent.
I'm working on something right now on the technology side.
Mhm.
So if I get something, final product, I will let you know.
Good,
Yeah,
good. That sounds good. Awesome. Well, Sadali, thank you very much for jumping
thank you.
in. And as you continue to think about your goals, just we're here for you. And
Thank you. Thank you, Laura.
if you want to do something 5 years from now, you contact us. If you want to do
Yeah,
something 2 months from now, contact us. We're here to help you.
thank you. Thank you, Troy.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, our goal is to put you in the best shape. So our longest uh, client was 638 days. It, it doesn't matter, but you know what? They got a great house. They got the house they wanted. It was a great transaction. We're here anytime. Now that we've met, you call me. I'm always going to shoot straight and give you a fair answer.
Thank you.
Awesome. Please tell your family that we said hello. Well, Troy's
I
never
will.
met them, but he has a
Yeah,
wonderful family, Troy. And
thank you.
please tell your family I said hi.
Thank you. I will.
All right. You guys take care.
All
All
right,
right.
guys.
Have
Have
a
a good
great one.
one.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.